Here is a presentation about infrastructure and facilities projects. It is created by Amy Law, based on her project management experience. We will give an introduction about Amy Law and her experience on IT infrastructure and facility projects. We will go over her projects, including new office build with network and audio-video upgrade, transformer pit railing and gate replacement, operating system upgrade and hardware refresh, secure remote access and critical security controls, Microsoft SQL Server, information management and Office 365, and daylight saving time change. Hey, this is Amy Law, your presenter. I have been working in IT for over 20 years in pipelines, energy regulator, oil and gas, utilities, transportations, and telecommunications. I have managed projects for over 15 years in IT applications and infrastructure, system and data migration, cybersecurity, ECM, SAP, process improvement, and office facilities. In terms of education, I completed bachelor and master in computer science from the University of Calgary. I received my PMP in 2006. I also completed certifications in project management, change management, ISO 27001, information security management system, and ITEL. One of my most interesting IT infrastructure and facilities programs was the new office project. This includes the setup of the IT infrastructure for two brand new offices, one in Calgary and the other one in Burnaby. This also included network infrastructure upgrade and deployment of over 100 new audio and video meeting rooms. My client had multiple offices across Alberta and British Columbia. To improve effective communication, my client decided to consolidate offices. A strong working relationship is usually established with a face-to-face conversation at the same physical location. If co-location at the same physical location is not possible, the next best communication channel is video conferencing, phone conversation, and online chat. On the other hand, email and meeting minutes are documentation and not the same as active conversation. So my client decided to establish an head office in Calgary and another main office in Burnaby. My client decided to move over 500 people from different areas of Alberta to the Calgary downtown office and move 200 people from different areas of British Columbia to the Burnaby downtown office. Both offices were brand new to accommodate over 700 people. This project offered an opportunity to enable people co-location, consolidate multiple operating surfaces into two offices, and lower the ongoing maintenance cost. People could spend less time on traveling between offices and reduce lengthy communications over the phone meeting. This promoted easy interaction, improved quality of the effective communication, and increased knowledge and information sharing. Last but not least, this provided the feeling of inclusion as the result of the close proximity. A project was initiated to support the effective communication. The project had to set up 110 new conference rooms and 40 new digital signs. This led to an upgrade to the network infrastructure as well as moving 16 printers. The project also upgraded 5 existing meeting rooms in the refinery office to align with the latest audio and video technology. I managed the project from initiation to closing, working with internal staff and over 10 vendors such as JLL, AVISPL, Integrity, Affinity, Insight, Ricoh, Xerox, COI, and DLO. We were able to plan document and execute activities relating to requirements gathering, design, installation, testing, and cutover. I established project budget, schedule, and resource management. I also provided weekly status report to directors and senior management. To ensure all teams were on the same page, we leveraged Skype to collaborate with key stakeholders on a weekly basis. We successfully prepared 700 new desks and configured 110 new meeting rooms with new Polycom devices, cameras, monitors, speakers, and sensors. We also update network infrastructure to accommodate advanced technologies like additional Ethernet port, digital signage, and Wi-Fi boosters. We scheduled the move across 5 weekends, total to over 700 people and 16 printers. We also completed printer mapping and follow-you printing setup. Last but not least, we upgraded 5 legacy meeting rooms from projector style to the latest audio and video technology. Here is a highlight of the new Office program lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. On day 1, everyone moving into the new office space was given a safety orientation. We provided a welcome breakfast at the office cafeteria. After unboxing and printer mapping, we provided a get-together lunch at the office cafeteria. The project sponsor spoke about the success of the office move. It was great to encourage social gathering and getting to know the new office neighbors. We should always celebrate our success with all the people contributed and involved. There could be a few technical issues or clarification on day 1, so we intentionally implemented a process to recall and resolve any technical issues. We booked additional IT staff to support the move so that we assigned 2 people on each floor. For eye-catching, the IT support staff would wear a t-shirt so that the helper could be identified easily. As a bonus, the Follow Me printing was implemented as part of the office move in Calgary. The Follow Me printing was secure because the print jobs enter a virtual queue and could only be released once the user authenticates themselves at the printer using a passcode or a swipe of their ID card. It was also environmentally friendly because it reduced the volume of unclaimed printout by ensuring users released print jobs at the printer. The printed documents would never be left unattended. Last but not least, the Follow Me was convenience because it released a printout from any of the printers connected to the network. As a preparation for day 1, we hired a Follow Me subject matter expert to help users to set up the printing profile on site. Here is a number of negative findings, and these situations should be minimized and or avoided in the future projects. Although the new floor plan and seating map were provided to VPs, directors, and managers weeks in advance, a few people just find out where they will sit on day 1. They were not satisfied with their new office space and location. This was a good lesson learned to ensure the VPs, directors, and managers had a thorough communication with their team about the new office space and location. The seating map was determined by the senior management. The project had no influence on where people would sit. Having said that, the project could have provided an on-site walkthrough with each team to enable the managers and their people to see their new office space and location prior to the move. Should there be any disagreement, the senior management would make the decision to either make the adjustment or influence their people early. Another issue was the lack of detailed requirements and design. For example, we didn't record the number of audio and video connections, type of Ethernet port, and power supply in each conference room. The electrical conduit was a metal pipe that was meant to protect the electrical wire. It was too small to accommodate all of the thick electrical wirings. By the time when this issue was identified, the conduit was already hidden in the concrete floor. We had a few options to fix this issue, but any of these options would lead to additional budget and time. Option 1 was to break the concrete floor to replace the conduit with a bigger pipe. Option 2 was to add an additional conduit to accommodate the remaining wires and use a piece of carbon, not concrete, to cover the conduit. Option 3 was to redesign and rebuild the audio and video configuration to accommodate the small conduit. Ideally, the detailed requirements and design should have been identified at the beginning of the project. Another example was the printer location couldn't fit the printer. It was off by 2 feet. We had options. Again, they would lead to additional budget and time. Option 1 was to replace the printer with a smaller model. Option 2 was to move the wall or power plug to accommodate the printer. Option 3 was to find a new location and move the printer with a series of adjustments to the floor plan followed by approval and communications. Ideally, the detailed requirements and design should have been identified at the beginning of the project. Another important requirement was missed related to network infrastructure. When we upgraded the network room, we added new server cabinet. The server cabinets came with doors. By default, the network analyst preferred to take out the cabinet doors to accommodate the narrow space in the network room. During the final walkthrough, the project champion indicated that the cabinet doors must be attached and locked to ensure no one can tamper the connections, even though the network room was fully secure with a swipe of the ID card. This type of requirements details should have been identified at the beginning of the project. Another good learning from this project was the use of the monitor arms at the workstation. Each cubicle was only 3 feet by 5 feet. A management decision was made to replace a monitor stand with a monitor arm. The monitor arm was meant to attach the monitor to the desk so that the desk would be a bit more spacious. This decision was pricey. First, a monitor always came with a monitor stand, which would no longer be needed but threw away for recycle. Second, the monitor setup would require labor and tool to attach the arm to the desk, leading to additional budget and time. Third, the monitor arm couldn't be moved easily after the installation, reducing its flexibility. Fourth, some users had 3 monitors and some had 2 monitors. They had their own preference to set up the monitors. The monitor arm was not as flexible as the monitor stand. If the monitor stands were used, users could move the monitors to any locations on the desk. According to the floor plan, we have power plugs on the floor in the training room. However, the location of the power plugs and the location of the training desk were not aligned. The power plugs were exposed and the wires connecting to the power plugs became safety risk. Ideally, the floor plan should include the training tables and power plugs to ensure safety. My client had multiple field offices. One of the field offices was a facility to repair an electricity transformer, which is an equipment with at least 25 feet deep, 20 feet wide, and 20 feet long. The facility had a huge electricity transformer pit to house the transformer during the repair. The pit had railing on the side, gate at the end, and catwalk on the top. The field office was over 30 years old without any renovation. During a recent safety inspection, my client was informed that the safety code was changed and so the railing, gate, and catwalk must be replaced to meet the new safety requirements. For example, the railing must be higher, the gate must be self-closable, and catwalk must be straight. A project was initiated to replace the transformer pit railing, gate, and catwalk to meet the new safety requirements. I managed the project from planning to closing. I engaged multiple vendors for the design, drawing, fabrication, quality control, engineering staff, and installation. Working closely with the field supervisor, we were able to complete the concrete testing to ensure the existing concrete had sufficient strength to support the new railing. We also had the vendor to spill a scaffold inside the transformer pit for safety during the construction. The project successfully delivered a new set of railing, gate, and catwalk. It ensured safety and quality, such as PMP stamped design, concrete scan, and coring validation. Here is a highlight of the transformer pit railing and gate replacement project lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. Field supervisor was very supportive. He made a positive influence at the field office to accommodate the changes, including the use of the transformer pit area and meeting rooms for detailed planning and coordination. All of the selected vendors had the experience in construction. They could easily identify a strategy and design for the fabrication and safe installation. Nothing can substitute experience. Quality process was well established. For example, pH stamp must be made on the drawing before internal management approval. Another example was that the concrete testing must be done through concrete scan and coring to ensure the density of the concrete could support the new fabrication. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and or avoided in the future projects. Since the field office was old, it did not have a floor plan with electric drawings. We couldn't tell whereabout were the hidden electric wire under the concrete or inside the wall. When we drill a hole to the concrete to stabilize the new railing, gate, and catwalk, we had to validate the current strength of the concrete. To do so, we must check if there was any wire inside the concrete. Without the electric floor plan, we had to turn off the power supply of the entire building before drilling. This was an overhead, leading to additional effort, time, and budget. When we turn off the power, we must engage Amex for pre-shut-off walkthrough and post-shut-off inspection. This was about $1,000 each run. The terminology of coring was another lesson learned. The definition of coring was to cut a hole in the concrete to validate the density of the concrete. When we decided to cut a small silicone size of concrete for the testing, this was still a risk that the coring area may have hidden wire, and therefore we had to shut off power of the entire field office. It was inconvenience, but necessary. Another interesting IT infrastructure program was the operating system upgrade and hardware refresh. Operating system updates were important because they included critical security patches to fill security gaps, improved the stability of the system, and removed outdated features. Hardware refresh was also important to better user experience. This project offered an opportunity to upgrade operating systems to Windows 10, including Office 365, and refresh selected computers with the latest hardware. This project also updated common software to ensure capability. I managed this project from initiation to closure. I engaged the internal staff and offsite vendor to plan, document, and execute project activities, including hardware selection, new master image setup, SCCM testing, procurement schedule, and delivery. I also established project budget and resource management. I leveraged a burn-down chart to track the remaining computers to be updated with the new operating system and to be refreshed with a new computer. I set up a project website to showcase the change schedule, FAQ, and latest status. Due to multiple competing priorities, I had to forecast project resources regularly and negotiate commitment proactively. I provided a weekly status report and leveraged Skype to collaborate and share desktop content with stakeholders across Canada daily. Last but not least, I coordinated with users before the computer upgrade and post-go-live support to ensure user experience. We successfully upgraded over 800 computers to Windows 10 and Office 365. We also refreshed over 300 computers that were 6 years or older to ensure the latest technology platform was available to support Windows 10. Here is a highlight of the program lessons learned on operating system upgrade and hardware refresh. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. The use of a burn-down chart was deemed to be useful. A burn-down chart is a graphical representation of work left to do versus time. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This was a great indication of how well the project is doing to upgrade the operating system and refresh the computers. Operating system upgrade and hardware refresh support each other. Their combined benefits are much higher than the benefit of any one project. Windows 10 has specific hardware requirements. As such, an older computer may not be compatible with Windows 10. A new hardware may not be efficient without the latest operating systems. As a result, these two projects were grouped into a program for combined benefit. Another positive action taken was to engage a vendor to include the new operating system image to the new computers before shipment. In some cases, the new computers were shipped to the remote locations and retail stores directly. From the logistic perspective, it was a time saving to engage the vendor to include the new image to the new computers despite of a minimal service charge. We leveraged a summer student to contact users individually about the upcoming operating system upgrade and procedure to back up their files. This included a phone call to the users before the upgrade and an email to follow up after the upgrade. Since some of the users were not familiar with the procedure, the additional communications help the users with a peace of mind. This is a great way to wrap up a project with an appreciation. We celebrated the project success with a team lunch. In addition, each project team member, including the operation manager and sponsor, received a gift card of $50 for their effort and contribution. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and/or avoided in the future projects. We should avoid a single source procurement because the single source could impact the schedule if their inventory is not sufficient or their warehouse is not local. The single source procurement is different from the sole source procurement. A single source procurement can be defined as 2 or more vendors can supply the commodity, technology, and/or perform the services required, but the company selects only one vendor over the others. A sole source procurement can be defined as any contract entered into without a competitor. Analysis of software in hardware is essential since the company has many affiliates with different software for their own department. It is essential to analyze the software to ensure the latest operating system is compatible. If the custom software is not compatible, project needs to upgrade the software. This will take time and effort. Based on the network bandwidth, the project identified a specific upgrade approach for office, remote users, and retail stores. For example, the project will simply create backup and push the operating system changes to the office machines. In some cases, remote locations had a poor network bandwidth. The project would have to ask the remote users to go to the nearby office for a higher network bandwidth in order to complete the operating system upgrade. In some other cases, remote users couldn't come to the nearby office. As such, the project would have to send a USB drive to the remote users for the operating system upgrade. It is critical to identify the nature of the upgrade before proceeding. One of my cybersecurity projects is to roll out the two-factor authentication to internal staff, affiliates, and external vendors. The client had a cybersecurity risk. The client was lack of capability to access files securely from home or outside of the office local area network. Without proper security process, setup, and training, the internal staff had challenges to collaborate with affiliates and external users. The project goal was to enable two-factor authentication to ensure secure access for files and systems. More importantly, the mandate is to deploy a security control to articulate who can access what with detailed audit trail. As a project manager, I work closely with VP to manage project planning, budget tracking, and communications. I managed an off-site vendor from finalizing statement of requirements to delivery. Working closely with support desk, the project completed a validation with 40 internal and external testers on a variety of desktops, laptops, mobile phones, and tablets with selected browsers. For OCM, the project created FAQ and user guide. In addition, the project scheduled one-on-one sessions for the support desk personnel to provide white glove support to senior management, including VPs and above. The project was successful. As such, we enabled over 750 users with secured remote access to their webmail, Citrix, and VPN. We improved secured collaboration for staff, affiliates, and external vendors. This became the first step moving into ISO 27001 Information Security Management System certification. Here is a highlight of the Secure Remote Access Project lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. We had a strong support from senior management. For example, the project sponsor empowered and inspired the project manager, stakeholders, and users. This naturally motivates the team by giving everyone an equal chance and opportunities and training. The project sponsor was also the one who sent out communication emails and posted project articles to the company website to promote the two-factor authentication. This is a part of OCM. The solution aligned with the organizational change objective to be certified ISO 27001 Information Security Management System. This ISO certification was the mandate from the parent company. This project moved the company a step closer to the ISO 27001 certification. The project had a well-defined project scope. As such, we only allowed a specific list of desktops, laptops, mobile phones, and tablets with vendor-supported browsers to use the two-factor authentication. Any other legacy systems and browsers were not supported. The list was communicated and published in the company website. It was also sent to managers so that we control the time and effort needed to validate the computers and browsers. This helped the operational team to control their operational cost in the long run. The project had an effective issue log and logging process. It provided the visibility of the quality status. It also provided the severity and priority of the issue before and post go live in the development and production environment. More importantly, the issue log had a date timestamp about the actions taken from the day when the issue was reported. When a sponsor asked for the status of an issue, we could quickly look it up from the issue log. This established trust, reliabilities, and proper attention to the quality of the product. Here is a number of negative findings, and these situations should be minimized and/or avoided in the future projects. Technology challenge led to a switch to a different security platform in the middle of the project execution. Ideally, a feasibility study and/or prototyping should be completed before technology selection. When this would be a small investment upfront, the investment would identify new opportunities, provide valuable information about options, improve project focus on the right solution, and identify a valid reason to undertake the recommendation. The project scope, budget, and timeline were all integrated. Due to the switch of the technology platform, the project budget was impacted. The good thing from this not so good situation was that we had a well-defined budget tracking system, showing a budget approved, actual spending, accrual, and forecast. So we were able to easily identify the budget deviation to address the technology switch. We were able to raise the change request on a timely fashion. The ripple effect also impacted the timeline. The project had to postpone the go-live date to align with the technology switch. The go-live date happened to be in August, which was in the midst of the summer. So the project recommended the new go-live date to be scheduled after the summer holidays. We were able to receive the approval, leveraging the strong management support. Another interesting program was the critical security controls. This program opened an opportunity to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve an information security management system. This was one of the first steps taken to reach the certification on ISO 27001 by achieving the maturity level 2 on the top 20 critical security controls. It was a real organizational change to meet the mandate set by the parent company. The project goal was to implement Center for Internet Security (CIS) top 20 critical security controls (CSC) within 2 years. We first assessed the current status of the security controls in the company. We did the assessment and prioritization based on the standard measures, metrics, and thresholds. Then we created a requirements traceability matrix showing the 20 controls, total to over 90 security requirements. We engaged the architectural team to identify alternatives for architectural design and make recommendations for each of the 20 controls. Based on the architectural recommendation, we created a program plan and roadmap. Since the time and budget were limited, we prioritized and identified the top 5 security controls for immediate implementation. This became phase 1 of the project. Critical Security Control 1 is the inventory of devices. This project offers an opportunity to actively manage all hardware devices on the network. Only authorized devices were given access. Unauthorized devices were prevented from gaining access. The project aimed to create network asset inventory that were approved to connect to the network. It aimed to implement automated network asset discovery tool to approve or deny entrance. We took the action to evaluate a list of security solutions using a list of criteria. The preference was to use the existing tools that will meet the requirements. If the tool was not available, then we will select a single tool for multiple critical security controls. So we select a Tripwire vendor to implement Network Asset Discovery Tool and Network Asset Inventory. Specifically, we selected Tripwire Ep023 as the Network Asset Discovery Tool and Network Asset Inventory. We also selected Tripwire Log Center to audit the Windows Server logs. Since Tripwire Solutions provided coverage for 14 of the top 20 critical security controls, including device and software inventory, secure configuration, vulnerability assessment, and log management, the program leveraged the same tool addressing multiple controls, leading to cost and time saving. Critical Security Control 2 is the inventory of software. This project offered an opportunity to actively manage software on the network so that only authorized software was installed and that unauthorized software was prevented from installation. The project aimed to identify and monitor authorized software for servers, workstations, and laptops. The project would deploy application whitelisting that allowed system to run software only if it is included in the whitelist and prevented execution of all other software. The project engaged Tripwire vendor to implement Tripwire Enterprise as the authorized software discovery tool. In addition, the project engaged McAfee vendor to deploy McAfee application control to manage the whitelisting tool. Since Tripwire Solution provided coverage for 14 of the top 20 critical security controls, including device and software inventory, secure configuration, vulnerability assessment, and log management, the program leveraged the same tool addressing multiple controls, leading to time and cost saving. In addition, the program leveraged the McAfee application control that block the execution of unauthorized applications and provided continuous monitoring of critical systems to prevent security violation, data loss, and outages. Critical Security Control 3 is the secure configuration for hardware and software. This project offered an opportunity to establish, implement, and actively manage the security configuration of laptops, servers, and workstations using a rigorous configuration management and change control process in order to prevent attackers from taking advantages of vulnerable surfaces and settings. The project aimed to establish processes, practices, and standards to define, build, and maintain secure operating system and software image, and to perform remote administration tasks. The project engaged Tripwire's vendor to implement Tripwire Enterprise to support configuration compliancy and monitoring, policy, file integrity checking, and remediation. The project established new processes, practices, and standards. Since Tripwire Solutions provided a coverage for 14 of the top 20 critical security controls, including device and software inventory, secure configurations, vulnerability assessment, and log management, the program leveraged the same tool addressing multiple security controls, leading to time and cost saving. Critical Security Control 4 is the continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation. This project offered an opportunity to continuously acquire, assess, and take action on new information in order to identify vulnerabilities, remediate, and minimize the window of operation for attackers. The project aimed to establish processes, practices, and standards to correlate event logs with information from vulnerability scans and to stay aware of merging vulnerabilities and continuously update vulnerability scanning software. The project engaged Tripwire vendor to implement Tripwire Ep360 to manage and monitor vulnerability and Tripwire Log Center to capture auditing logs and scan and logging. The project established new processes, practices, and standards. Since Tripwire Solutions provided a coverage for 14 of the top 20 critical security controls, including device and software inventory, secure configurations, vulnerability assessment, and log management, the program leveraged the same tool addressing multiple security controls, leading to time and cost saving. Critical Security Controls 5 is the controlled use of administrative privileges. This project offered an opportunity to deploy processes and tools to control the use, assignment, and configuration of administrative privileges on computers, networks, and applications. The project aimed to minimize administrative privileges and only use administrative accounts when they were required. The project aimed to implement focused auditing on the use of administrative privilege functions and monitor for anomalous behavior. The project engaged Tripwire vendor to implement Tripwire Log Center to monitor and log events. Tripwire Enterprise to manage and audit the use of administrative accounts. The project established new processes, practices, and standards. Since Tripwire Solutions provided coverage for 14 of the 20 critical security controls, including device and software inventory, secure configurations, vulnerability assessment, and log management, the program leveraged the same tool addressing multiple controls, leading to time and cost saving. Here is a highlight of the Critical Security Control Program lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. We had a strong support from senior management. For example, the project sponsor empower and inspire the project manager, stakeholders, and users. This naturally motivates the team by giving everyone an equal chance at opportunities and training. The project sponsor participated in weekly status meeting and provided support in whichever way and whatever way the project team needed. It was the reason to why the project was successful. The project leveraged requirements traceability matrix to showcase 20 critical security controls, which expanded into over 90 critical security requirements. Using the matrix, we make the assessment based on the standard measures, metrics, and thresholds. Based on the matrix, we were able to identify the high risk and high value work. Therefore, we prioritize and identify the top 5 critical security controls for immediate implementation. This became phase 1 of the program. The client makes references to CIS, Center for Internet Security, to discover a variety of tools and services to help organizations around the world start secure and stay secure. Based on the CIS Reference: the project engaged the architects to identify alternatives and make recommendations. Program plan and roadmap were extremely helpful to give an overview of which security controls will be implemented first and which will come next. They provided graphical representation on project priorities and dependency. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and/or avoided in the future projects. One of the reasons to kickstart the Critical Security Control Program was to support the ISO 27001. The mandate was to complete ISO 27001 within 2 years. This was an aggressive schedule, given competition, priorities, and limited resources. We had to prioritize the individual projects and took the phased approach so that the project team could focus accordingly. Change of resources was another challenge in the program. The client had a union which firmly defined how long a contractor could stay with the company. Due to the union constraint, many contractors, including the program manager, project manager, architect, and business analysts, were not able to be renewed and stayed, leading to a major project disruption. The contracted resources should have stayed and completed the program. Some of the computers and systems were not kept up to date. For example, some computers at the field did not allow for a long password. Some systems were no longer vendor supported, opening itself for security threats. It was a difficult situation as we had to make a decision to either upgrade this outdated IT asset or accept the exception as security gaps. Organizations should always keep their technologies up to date. My client had custom applications using a variety of business reporting and analysis technologies. This led to a high operating and maintenance cost. This opened an opportunity to identify a single tool to improve reporting and analysis capability and reduce the sustainment cost. A project was initiated to implement Microsoft SQL Server infrastructure to consolidate reporting and analysis software. I managed the project from initiation to closing, while engaging multiple teams for requirement gathering and validation. I created implementation alternatives with qualifying data and presented to directors. I also make risk visible and provided proactive resolution. I manage vendor resources and work with procurement on hardware purchases and delivery. The project deployed Microsoft SQL Server successfully. We also engaged new projects and users to leverage the Microsoft SQL Server services immediately after the infrastructure was deployed. We scheduled regular Microsoft Health check as well. Here is a highlight of the Microsoft SQL Server project lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. A strong senior management support, including ISVP and director, provided communications to their teams and promoted the new IT infrastructure. They make the appropriate influence to their team as part of the change management. Amazing vendor engagement was another reason to why the project was successful. The vendor was able to provide a variety of reporting and analysis demos for the key stakeholders and earned a strong buy-in right at the get-go. Right after the infrastructure was deployed, we had new projects and users line up to tap into the reporting and analysis services. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and/or avoided in the future projects. This project was an infrastructure project only. It would be ideal to include a custom application reporting in this project so that we could provide a working solution with a new reporting and analysis tool. The vendor provided a consulting service to review documentation and approval. However, their rate was extremely high. It didn't make sense when they created a documentation to support their tool and then charged their client for the final documentation review. As a result, we did not take the consulting service on the documentation review. We simply accepted the documentation. Information management project is a common project in many organizations. My client faced a few challenges as a result of the immature information management. This include the broken search, lack of record retention and disposition impacting compliancy, insufficient taxonomy and metadata, and confusing workflows. A project was initiated to implement content management solution integrated with record management solution. This also include user training to improve the understanding and maturity of information management. The project objective was to enable a solid information management to meet the regulatory compliancy. I worked closely with director, managers, and various teams to manage project scope, schedule, budget, resources, risk, quality, communications, and procurement. We prepare the business areas on content cleanup and migration to SharePoint Online. We tackle and classify risk with probability and impact to enable management to make an informed decision and account for sufficient contingency. We also develop decision summaries for project alignment with various groups. Through the RFP process, the project selected a technology vendor to complete a number of technical workshops and pilot. The project completed the initiation, planning, and pilot execution successfully. Due to the company acquisition and split, this project was canceled before go live. Here is a highlight of the information management project lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. Technology on information management was leading edge at the time. To manage the technical risk, the project leveraged a feasibility study and executed a pilot before landing on a technology. This was a small investment upfront. The investment identified new opportunities, provided valuable information about options, improved project focus on the right solution, and identified a valid reason to undertake the recommendation. The use of a burn-down chart was deemed to be useful. A burn-down chart is a graphical representation of work left to do versus time. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This was a great indication of how well the pilot was going and how many sites were validated and ready for migration. It was essential to review and clean up existing sites before migration to a new platform. This included the cleaning of unwanted sites, outdated workflows, and old contents. The bigger the site, the longer it would take to conduct migration and testing. The ultimate advantage of cleaning up the site before migration was to maximize the destination storage space, minimize the time required to validate the site post-migration, and reduce operational cost to maintain this new site. To be sure we select the right vendor, we conduct a number of professional reference checks. During a reference check, we discuss with the references about their information management implementation. This was a great experience, sharing on how other organizations take the information management to another level. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and or avoided in the future projects. Although the vendor was local, the vendor resources stayed at their vendor office to configure SharePoint workflows and report. While this was a part of the statement of work, it did not go well with the client, who would prefer the on-site collaboration and interaction. The preferred approach was to retain the vendor resources on site during the configuration to ease the transition to client's operational team. The pilot was successful, proved the technology, but the project was canceled due to the acquisition and split. This was an unexpected event. The good thing from this not-so-good situation was that the signed statement of work had an exit clause. The project was able to exit the contract without penalty with 7-day notice under specific circumstances. The extended support of Office 2010 would end in October 2020. My client had to upgrade Office 2010 to Office 365. This would also support an in-flight information management solution implementation project that required Office 365. A project was initiated to upgrade Office. It aimed to upgrade over 800 user machines and share machines, including Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Visio. It aimed to support information management projects to maximize technology benefits such as code editing. I worked closely with 80 testers to validate over 300 applications that integrate with Office 365. I also prepare stage deployment based on department, locations, and exceptions. Working with multiple business and IS teams, I developed test plan, test guideline, communication plan, and user training materials using the change model, which focused on change awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Last but not least, I provided a weekly project status report and engaged financial analysts to complete budget reviews, including actual and accruals against approved and forecast per person per month. Here is a highlight of the Office 365 project lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. Technology on Microsoft Office 365 Pro Plus was leading edge at the time. To manage the technical risk, the project leveraged a feasibility study and execution of a pilot. This was a small investment upfront. The investment identified new opportunities, provide valuable information about options, improved project focus on the right solution, and identify a valid reason to undertake the recommendation. The project had an effective issue log and logging process. It provided the visibility of the quality status. It also provided the severity and priority of the issues before and post go live in the development and production environment. More importantly, the issue log had a date time stamp about the action taken from the day when the issue was reported. When a sponsor asked for the status of an issue, we could quickly look it up from the issue log. This established trust, reliability, and proper attention to the quality of the product. We had a strong support from senior management. For example, the project sponsor participated in weekly status meeting and provided support in whichever way and whatever way the project team needed. It was the reason to why the project was successful. The project had a well-defined project scope. As such, we only had sufficient time and budget to upgrade Microsoft Office and not associated custom applications. In some cases, we identified legacy applications not compatible with Office 365. We identified an exception process and grace period. The process was to create a decision document to determine the actions necessary to address the legacy application, including funding and timeline. In the meantime, the legacy application would begin the exception, which meant people using these applications would not be upgraded to Office 365 during the grace period. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and/or avoided in the future projects. As the project scope control was in place, we didn't have sufficient project funding to upgrade legacy applications. This led to a risk that some of the users would not upgrade their machine to Office 365 until their legacy applications were upgraded and became compatible with the new Office. This had an impact to the timely support of the information management solution. The pilot was successful and proved the technology, but the project was canceled due to company acquisition and split. The good thing from this not-so-good situation was that the signed statement of work with a vendor had an exit clause. The project was able to exit the contract without penalty with 7-day notice under specific circumstances. The extended support of Office 2010 would end in October 2020. The security patches for Windows 7 would end in January 2020. My client had to upgrade to Windows 10 and Office 365 within a short time frame. The project objective was to replace the outdated software and change user behavior on collaboration and security compliancy using Office 365. I created a business case and project charter. I also facilitate and kick-off for over 30 people. Based on the result from the kick-off, I created detailed project plan, budget tracking, and organizational chart with roles and responsibility. I also refined and execute statement of work, including 6 work packages with Microsoft, total to over $2 million. I work with Microsoft to finalize deliverables, create integrated project plan, and coordinate on-site visit. This included a scattered business unit deployment strategy and transition to vendor execution. Last but not least, I leveraged OneNote and SharePoint Online for team communications. The project completed project initiation, planning, and pilot on desktop sharing with video and audio conferencing using Microsoft Teams. The project was transitioned to Microsoft vendor for execution. Here is a highlight of the Microsoft Office and Windows 10 project lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. The project had a strong business case. The business benefits accounted for the increase of collaboration, such as the reduction on email usage through the increased virtual video conferencing and reduction of room booking. Another business benefit was the cost efficiency through the removal of the pricey WebEx usage, reduced hardware cost, leveraging the cloud storage, and reducing on-site servers. Last but not least, the project ensures security compliancy through regular security patches and information compliancy through retention schedule in document management. Key stakeholders played an active participation during the project kickoff. The session had over 30 people, including project sponsor, project manager, business analyst, technical analyst, support desk managers, operating managers, and change manager. In the kickoff session, we were able to identify project tasks, durations, and dependencies. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and/or avoided in the future projects. The vendor resources were fully booked. Their availability came 4 weeks after the kickoff. We make an attempt to request for different Microsoft resources, but vendor rejected. The only choice was to wait. This led to a delay of the project schedule. If we had a choice, we should have considered another vendor. Project budget was tight, leading to a change of contractor for a lower rate. This included the change of project manager and business analyst, affecting the project continuity. Legislation in the United States in 2007 moved the start of daylight time 3 weeks earlier in the spring and the return to standard time a week later in the fall. The change was aimed to help save energy. However, this change was announced in December with the effective date in mid-March. It was an external change that we had no control. A project was initiated to update computers, servers, mobile devices, and critical applications for the new daylight saving time within 2 months. I managed the project from initiation to closing. We engaged well over 100 people to make the internal changes. Due to the high project priority, I reported directly to VP and sponsors. I provided weekly email with color-coded status. I also coordinated final validation with over 14 testers, starting at 2 a.m. for 12 hours on Sunday. At the same time, I kept my clients informed through a telephone hotline that was updated every 30 minutes. The project successfully updated 3,000 computers, 500 servers, 200 mobile devices, and 10 critical applications for the new daylight saving time to support the U.S. government's energy bill. Here is a highlight of the daylight saving time change project lessons learned. A number of positive findings were identified. They are meant to be repeated in the future projects. We had a strong senior management support, including VP and directors from across the company. The VP and directors provided communications to their teams to ensure the timeline and changes were clear and understood. They make the appropriate influence to their teams as part of the change management. We had a great project team supporting throughout, from initiation to closing. For example, the project team completed final go-live production testing from 2 a.m. in the morning when the daylight saving time change took place. We had an amazing vendor engagement. We had on-site meeting with vendors to review and test patches. For example, we completed a validation of the patches on calendar and email notification. This included over 30 administrators to participate in testing and communications. Here is a number of negative findings, and this situation should be minimized and or avoided in the future projects. Some of the critical systems were not kept up to date. For example, we couldn't find a patch for these legacy systems to support the daylight saving time change. After the time change, the system clock was no longer working correctly. Organizations should always keep their technologies up to date. Since the project timeline was extremely aggressive, project team was under a lot of pressure. They had to work overtime and put in extra effort to complete the validation of the patches and go live weekend. Thank you very much for your time. Please contact me for additional project management templates and samples. Here's my contact information.